Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Arcane Gate. I'm Denaru.
And I'm Charles Walker, FallMonkey20, and today we are joined by another awesome D&D creator, and that is Feltheleb. Fel, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I go by Feltheleb. And I'll pronounce it again so that in case anyone, so no one messes it up. Not that it would matter. Feltheleb, but I go by Fel online. I am a online hobbyist voice actor, and I'm also more recently, Dungeons and Dragons content creator. I've been playing for a while. Just recently got into kind of creating content for it.
Yeah, and that is something I was actually wanting to ask you about, is I came in when you were already doing Dungeons & Dragons content, so finding out you're looking in through your backlog, find out you're more into voice acting stuff kind of surprised me. So what really caused the transition between that?
So I started doing voice acting stuff. I want to say between 2 and 3 years ago, and I've had a lot of good success. I've gotten paid for work. I have met a lot of really cool people, got to do some fun projects, but kind of throughout my time, as things got a little bit more busy with me through work and through school, I just recently graduated from grad school. I realized that I used to make a lot of content focused just around the voice acting community, at least the online voice acting community, but it just got a little bit stale. I was looking for something new to do. And I just, thought, why don't I bring in another one of my hobbies, which, in that sense was D&D. I had already had contact with the content creator, Aiden. I don't know if you're aware of his content, but I had seen a lot of the stuff that he had been doing, just from following him. And I think I talked to him on the DMs like one time. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I could try to make, and I already consumed a lot of D&D content anyway. So I was like, yeah, man, I could give it a shot. And that's pretty much how that whole thing got started. That was maybe 3 or 4 months ago when I started doing the D&D content. But I've met a lot of really cool people and got to play some fun games because of it. So that's been a plus to kind of expanding my horizons as far as content goes.
I know, like you mentioned, got into voice acting, but I guess how did you fully get into that? That's always been a thing that I hear is getting into voice acting, but I don't know the process of it myself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think everyone has kind of a different journey. I know that at least as far as online voice acting goes, it's a pretty similar, just kind of the technicality of getting to it. The motivation behind getting into it was I was going into grad school. I had just recently graduated from undergrad, where I had done a lot of theater. I had done a lot of improv, and I wanted to maintain some sort of kind of creative outlet in my time in grad school. And grad school doesn't really have the kind of, clubs that you can join, that sort of thing, that sort of structure. So in order to give myself structure, I picked up a mic that I had found in a closet that was I think, I don't know exactly how it ended up there, but I found the mic. I created an account on, there's a kind of a hobbyist voice acting board called Casting Call Club. There's a couple, but that was the one that I kind of started on. And through making a Twitter account dedicated solely to voice acting, and through just kind of putting myself out there, recording for auditions, getting cast in a couple, networking, I kind of built up whatever Feltheleb could be from that kind of base. And because I have the kind of drive to kind of make content, a lot of people who do voice acting are just in it so they can be a part of something. I feel like there's maybe not a lack, but I think the real way to network, if you're in just at least an online hobbyist field, is to actually go out and, it's you only can get cast in so many things, but if you make your own project and you cast yourself, you get to have a lot more roles. So that was kind of where I started with that, was just started as a way to kind of maintain creativity, and then just kind of bloomed into an online persona that was just focused around doing the stuff that I wanted, I guess.
Nice.
Makes sense, yeah.
That was something I was curious about, because that is interesting, because that is number one thing. And we were talking about cons off camera, but that is something I noticed that nearly every voice actor I see gets asked, is someone asking them, how do I become a voice actor? There's a big interest in it.
Yeah, I mean, especially because, our generation, or I don't think I'm that much younger and or older than you guys. I'm 25. My generation. Say.
We're all the same age then.
Oh,
Yep.
cool, awesome. Our generation.
Yes.
The 25-year-old.
Yes. The millennials.
The millennials born in, I'm assuming, in 1994, or were you 95 guys?
4.
4.
Mm-hmm.
That's
94.
what 1994 gang.
All right.
Quarter club, yeah.
Okay. So, we grew up in an era that was so saturated with media that required voice acting, whether that's, video games, talking animation, even now, I think people around our age, like the rise of Japanese anime in the West has opened up such a large field for voice acting that we're just exposed to a lot more of it. So it makes a lot of sense that a lot of people from our generation want to do that kind of thing, because you see something enough, and sure enough, people are going to want to attempt it. And I think with acting is such a personal. Trey and I were talking before about doing some acting. I think acting itself is such a personal thing, and it's so just innately human that just people, even if you're not like, you don't have to be like good at it to be a good storyteller. I think that's true of Dungeons and Dragons. Well, you don't have to be like, there's no like being good. There's being good enough to be paid for it. But I think everyone has a drive to be like a storyteller in that sense.
Also, I guess like the definition of being good at acting, how you said like to be paid for it, is you are convincing as that person. But with D&D, like we all know that we're each other. We're just kind of playing this other character to get a story across, and you're just telling a story. So, like you said, you don't have to be necessarily good at it, but acting alone is just fun.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to acting, just whether it's acting or whether it's storytelling, I had a friend that asked me, he was like, how do I want to make sure I'm getting paid to do voice acting. I do not consider myself like I do it as a hobby. I've been lucky enough to have found casting calls that I was appropriate for, that I have been able to get paid for. I'm very thankful for that, because it's not something that everyone can say. But even then, I think online voice acting is no different than just regular acting. It's just putting forth the emotion, being willing to kind of like open yourself up. At least that's how I see it. I think that's true of role playing in Dungeons and Dragons as well. I always have found that the most compelling, quote unquote, acting in Dungeons and Dragons is the times where people were like, screw it, I'm just gonna go whole hog into this emotionally. I'm gonna scream the screams, I'm gonna cry the tears, like just like allowing yourself to kind of feel those emotions. That to me is my favorite that's to me the kind of role play that I think is really intriguing and is really interesting to see and to be a part of.
Yeah.
That's something someone gave me advice for when it came to doing voices that really stuck with me. He said, like, if you deliver a line and you feel like it was real cringy, more than likely it was really great and you're just criticizing yourself.
No, absolutely. One of the characters, my warlock, has a patron, which is this kind of, we call him, he doesn't have a name. Him not having a name is kind of a big part of their story. The patron himself is called the Bandage Man, is what we refer to him as. He's like a unknown entity that is like wrapped in like bandages, like a mummy, and he's so mysterious and no one knows his name. And I always feel kind of dumb when I do his voice, because it's like, oh, Friar, what can you give me? What can I provide to you in return? And I feel dumbish. I won't swear. I feel really dumb doing the voice, but I think everyone in my campaign has bought into it. And once you buy in, you allow yourself to just like kind of like actually be like, you can kind of convince yourself, oh, this is actually something that's kind of terrifying. This is like a scary entity. Of course, that comes with buying in. But I don't know. You're among friends. You're already doing something that's incredibly nerdy. It's just like there's no reason to have any trepidations. Maybe if you're playing with strangers, but if you're amongst like friends across a table, just like buy into it. Those make for funner moments, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys have any experiences.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because especially like how you mentioned, Charles, where if you feel cringy about it, you're probably doing it right. Once you break through that point of like holding yourself back from doing your best performance, it's so much more liberating, and you end up becoming a better voice actor or actor in general because of it. The cringe is just like a bear you're holding yourself back.
And I feel like when you really just give it your all and go hard at it, the other people at tables see it, and it becomes a lot easier for them to really roleplay and get in on it and just go for it.
Well, and I know that I'm actually made a video about this idea of like in improv, something that I did for 4 or 5 years. One of the things that I said in the video is that there's a concept in improv called, if you'll learn it in any beginner improv course, which is just yes and. It's this concept that, because just for the sake of narrative efficiency, because it's when you're improving something, you don't really have time to kind of pick and choose the things that you want to be in a scene. You just have to accept everything that's going on and then add to it. And that's what yes and is. And to speak to the idea of like, ooh, I'm like cringing, or like, ooh, the party who's playing isn't gonna accept me. The hope is always that they'll say yes to the performance that you're giving, that they will, at least on an emotional level. And I talk about this in the video on my YouTube channel. YouTube Feltheleb, that's my Feltheleb, that's my YouTube channel. I think like the one way to say yes in that sense is to just like accept what the other person is doing emotionally. Like in your role play, like in your tabletop group, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or any other tabletop RPG, if someone like meets their father and like they've never seen, it's like the first time they've ever seen their father before, and they just learned that it's their dad, and they want to have the emotional moment, I think it's kind of like, I actually think it's kind of rude to be like, well, daddy's boy over here, like just like kind of ribbing them, because then they don't get to have that fun, emotional experience, which is part of, as fun as it is to roll dice and play around and, do sick damage on goblins. Like, I think one of the reasons I love D&D anyway is that it does allow for a type of storytelling that allows you to have that emotional reaction. There's not many type of games that like allow you to actually feel something, if that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, like I cried at the end of Nier Automata. Like that is a game I cried at.
Oh god.
I felt that I always feel something whenever I replay BioShock 2. I'm weird for that reason, maybe. But
I played that a month ago. Actually, I really liked it.
It's a sick game, but it's not as personal as like as Dungeons and Dragons can be. I think to getting to that level, and then of course with the yes and accepting it emotionally, and then adding to it emotionally. Like if I'm a friend and I see, like if I see you, Charles, if you and I are friends and I see you crying, like that's good. Like the way I react to that in real life will be informed by my empathy. And I think that's true of, if you want to have really solid role play, and I think my group achieves that, at least on most occasions, allowing yourself to have that empathy for that other person. This is all things that we know inherently, but sometimes I think it's good to just remind ourselves of it. Mm-hmm. I'm doing a lot of hand motions. I'm not sure if that's tracking with my video quality.
Yeah, and I actually had that one time where 2 of my party members actually cried in the middle of one of my games, and we still consider that such a great night. It was, you ever played Out of the Abyss?
I have not. I've heard of it, though.
Okay, generally I do like to do my own homebrew stuff, but I put a lot into my homebrew games, so usually in the middle of my homebrew games, like when I'm writing out a whole world, I'll run like one of the main book adventures to kind of give people a break, give myself a break so I can work on that while still having D&D going. And there's a Mycodon in the game called Stool, and how the game works is you're literally start in a drought prison camp, and the first mission is to break out of the camp. There's a variety of prisoners there, but one of them was a Mycodon sprout that was stuck in the prison camp. Like, he got separated from his group, and the drought took him prisoner. So there was this literal child in the prison camp that you have to babysit the whole game, and the party loved him. He was such a cute kid, and my wife told me multiple times, if he dies, I'm not waking up. And when the party left and they finally said goodbye to him, and they had the moment of just like, they finally took him home, and they didn't want to let him go, but they got him to the end of his journey, and they're just like, well, you take care of yourself. And he's like, well, of course I will. Y'all taught me how to survive. And literally, one of my players, a full-grown man, just teared up a little bit, like, and him and one of the girls in the party just start crying, like, oh god. And at the end of it, he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. And everyone in the group was like, no, that was fine, that was fine. Even the evil wizard, it was just like, oh man.
Oh, my heart.
Yeah,
Feels.
it was just, yeah, and I still consider that one of my most proud moments as a DM. Like, wow, I made this party get so attached to this fictional mushroom that they cried when they realized they couldn't see him again.
But doesn't that feel like a badge of honor, though, to like the biggest compliments that I think my players give me as a DM is when they were like, one of the main compliments, I think the biggest compliment that I have ever taken from a player is they were like, hey, I just want to let you know that I have never felt so attached to this character that I'm playing. And it's like, I've never felt like that before in another campaign. And it's like, that feels really like that to me is better than like, hey, Fel, I just want to let you know, when we killed that stone giant, like I did a lot of damage, and that was really sick that I did a lot of damage.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just like them walking away, just like, yeah, great session, man. Just seeing their emotional reactions, like, oh man, I did good.
Make an entire party cry with 0 deaths.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, it's true of any form of storytelling. You don't. I think I forget who. I was listening to a podcast, and I want to say it was Brennan Lee Mulligan. He's the DM for who I bring up in the Yes and video on my YouTube channel. Brennan Lee Mulligan. He is the DM for Dimension 20, which is a Dungeons and Dragons show on the streaming service Dropout, which was formerly College Humor. And he has a podcast called Adventuring Academy. And in one of the things, I think I'm paraphrasing on the quote, but what he said was essentially like, no one gets to the end of like Lord of the Rings and they're like, and no one talks about Lord of the Rings in the terms of like at the end of it, like what like sick loot that they took away from because it's not about like the loot or like, no one talks about like how good Frodo was at swinging a sword by the end of it. Like leveling up is fun. It's fun to get cool items. It's fun to get loot, and it's fun to like feel like your character's improving, and the number crunch that results from that is pretty fun. But like what makes a story is, that emotional draw to it, and and seeing a character's arc realized from the beginning to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe Frodo got better at swinging a sword. I'm sure he was more hardy at the end. I'm sure he went up a couple levels.
Gollum was a unique creature. He might have been worth a decent experience.
A solid XP chunk from. Did he technically? He killed him kind of like on accident. So I don't know how much the DM's going to award Frodo. I think
all the XP went to Sam.
I'm gonna say that's what I'm saying. I'm the DM. I'm awarding most of it to Sam because Sam
deserves it.
He's the real hero in the story.
That's a great example. No one mentions, like all the other stuff, but like the story is what is important. And that is true with D&D games, to me at least. I know a lot of campaigns I've been in, I'm more invested in the ones that have an overarching story. Yes, the loot and everything's great. I might like my character, but I want to look forward to the game every week. Like I want to look forward to continue the story to enhance the experience.
Yeah, and that's where I differ in particular from some people I played with is combat's like one of my least favorite things in D&D, and it's not to say I don't like it, it's just like compared to the whole story arc I could do with a character to seeing world building and seeing what twists and turns the DM has prepared for me, that's usually my favorite thing in D&D. Like I feel like combat's a good like icing on the cake reward and make you feel like you really accomplished something in the game aside of, but other than that, like I feel like the story's what I really lean into.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's what some people miss, and it is a role-playing game in essence, but I know there's some people that'll just turn it into a big grindhouse game, and I know I was in a few campaigns where that was it, the story kind of evolved, and it was just us move to next area, get a little dialogue, fight the thing, move on to next area.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel on this, but for me anyway, whenever it comes to designing combat, and I'm sure my players would tell you this as well, every combat, I don't do random encounters at all. I think random encounters in the sense that like they don't provide anything, to me just seems like busy work for the party or filler. Now, let me be honest, there's times where I need filler, but to me anyway, every combat is a way for you to like add something to the story, even if it's in a small way. Even if the reason that they got into combat is because something's going to be added to the story, they've got a new enemy, or maybe someone's turned against them. I don't see to kind of go on your point, Charles. It's combat to me should be always a part of the story. I know not everyone feels like that, you know, especially if you're. Yeah. We do milestone leveling, so like if you're in, I play fifth edition campaign. If you're doing like XP, if you're doing XP, right? You know, there's reason to have, you know, random encounters, and that's obviously a different consideration. How I play, and I would never presume to tell anyone how to play. At least how I play anyway. We do milestone leveling, and I try to make combat always have some sort of importance to the story itself. Because otherwise it feels, to go to what you were saying, Trey, like I feel like I'm wasting time otherwise, and I want people to like come back for it. Mm-hmm. I always try to leave off on some sort of cliffhanger, provide a little new information at the end, or try to work things in such a way that they'll, you know, have a reason to come back. That's me personally, though.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, you mentioned milestone leveling, and I kind of want to get your input on that, because I've never done a milestone myself. I've just done XP. So like, how does that differ?
When it comes to XP leveling, I just find that sometimes, this is the big reason, and I could have some way more, you know, spiritual reason for doing it. To me, milestone is just easier. My brain kind of works. I know certain times when it's time for the party to level, and I can also kind of, so for example, in the campaign that I'm doing right now, we've planned for this campaign to kind of last throughout the summer. So I have certain story beats on which I think it would be appropriate for them to level up. That one of those story beats, for example, being the party essentially has to get like 3 MacGuffins throughout the time. MacGuffin, for those of you who are in the chat who may not know, is just like, it's just a word for like the Infinity Stones are kind of like a MacGuffin. It's just like something that everyone wants, that everyone's trying to get, that, you know, you can exchange like anything for it. In my party's case, there are these kind of celestial astrolabes that are important to the overarching story. Now, they're important to the story for their own reasons, but they're kind of MacGuffins in the traditional sense. And with each one they get, I've already kind of planned for them to level up with each one, just because it makes sense with the story beats. There's other story beats that I've planned. It's just, for me, it's easier than keeping track of when is everyone going to level? Does one person have more XP than the other? How do I handle, because were I to do XP leveling system, I would want to award role-playing XP, because I think that's just a personal preference of mine. I think that, you know, purely combat XP makes a campaign that's too focused on combat. And like we've already talked about, right, my preference is I swing the dial, for me, goes more towards the roleplay side. So it's just easier for me as a DM. It's less for me to keep track of and less for me to worry about. That's kind of where I fall. Some people, like I've been referencing like number crunch. I know a lot of people enjoy that, and people like to have a solid, they like to see that bar tick up and kind of know when they're going to advance to the next level. It's just not for me personally as a DM, but I understand the appeal of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sniper Ryan chat made a pretty good point. I've dealt with XP leveling and milestones. Milestone is amazing because it makes leveling more chapter focused and not on if you killed enough enemies.
It's like a bookend to a certain levels, and it makes it makes sense for that reason.
Yeah,
I definitely have to try it one day.
Yeah, I've done both. As an art can attest, I pretty much give XP for any time I think a player does something good. I'm like, here, take some experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like I give experience for good role play, completing quests, stuff like that. I really do like the experience, and my reason for it is I started a campaign with Milestone, and this is a little bit of how I DM. It made it hard to do milestones, so I'll say, if you do it really episodic and chapter-like Sniper mentioned, it works so good. But for me, my problem was I make my campaigns very big and open world, so the problem is, if the characters don't think they're going to get a level up out of it, sometimes it can feel like less incentive to explore the thing or do it. But if they have experience, it can also add to every little choice they make can have that. And I will say, if you have a very murder hobo centered party, that can be a problem doing the experience, because that can encourage some people that want to kill every little thing that isn't important to them. And
you know,
get all the loot.
It's definitely all a matter of like how you and like what your expectations are for the game. Like, for example, take something like Critical Role, where they have, you know, there's a story there, an overarching story they're exploring, but they have so much free will that like planning milestones might not make sense. They do they do I'm pretty sure they do XP.
First campaign to the experience, second campaign to do a milestone.
Oh well, I only know the first campaign, so that's my. But I guess the point I was trying to make is like, you know, if you have kind of more of an open end story that, you know, you are just kind of like, you know, let's just do this kind of indefinitely and just like see where it goes. I think XP makes a lot of sense for that. But what I was saying is, for my campaign, we planned at the outset, like, this is not going to last forever. We want a story that's going to take us X number of months, probably at a maximum, definitely at a minimum. And for that reason, because I'm planning the story beats and I know how quick the party can go, I just do milestone leveling because it's easier.
I actually want to tell the story because it's pretty hilarious why I decided to switch, because in that open-ended campaign, the first 3 levels were all milestones, and at 4th is when I made the change, when I nearly got murdered by my party. Like I said, I left it open-ended for them, so they had the option to do what they wanted. And what they did was they took this side quest where they took a fortress back from a bunch of goblins, and that's all they had to do was take the fortress. Then they decided they wanted to keep the fortress. I'm like, you want to keep the fortress? Like, yeah, we want to keep the fortress. I'm like, we're going to have to defend it from the rest of the goblin army that's going to want to take their fortress back. Okay. And I sent a literal army at them. They had 120 goblins to kill. And they had like at level 3.
Oh,
and
no.
Yeah, so I planned for in case things go wrong. But they also had 2 main NPCs, and it had 2 hirelings they got as well to help them guard the place, and it was a party of 6 people. So pretty well built. There was a ranger, an artificer, a rogue. There was some decently range built people, so they're able to hold it pretty well. But you throw 120 goblins, some hobgoblins mixed in, some goblin mages, all mixed in together. Eventually, they started running out of things, and it was a very tight, close 3 to 4 hours of only combat session, and the ranger literally spent a week putting traps everywhere, so at least a good 20 goblins were killed before they even got there.
Well, that's good, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so amazing. Like, it was one of the best combat sessions ever ran. Everyone was so pumped, and I'm like, well, all right. Then they're like, how do we level up? I'm like, no, you don't. And there was instant silence in the room as everyone stared at me like, we don't get it. Like, you just got level 3. They were angry, and
Well, they got
I don't want to put my wife on the hot seat more than I already have, but she was not happy. So I seriously thought about it and thought, like, eventually it's going to get to the point where I can give them as many side option rewards and possibilities as I want, but eventually gold's not going to mean anything to a high level party, and something like that, they earned a big reward with that, so it kind of made me think maybe I should try experience. And that was my take on it. Is I like the idea of every choice they make does have an actual weight to it, you know?
Right, I agree.
Because there's other ways to give rewards and stuff, but experience it's something everyone likes. It's an easy thing to do if you're not giving them gold.
Yeah, I feel that.
I feel like you definitely have to know your party as well, because and also your party has to understand like the intentions of the campaign, like how you mentioned how you set like this is how long it's going to last, and you know the chapter points in which to level them up. If you know the people well enough, and that's exactly what they're expecting, I feel like Milestone could be great. But
Yeah.
as Mighty Simpson says, problem with Milestone is my players asked to level up every session. That's different.
Oh man, the rogue from the party's in the chat. Oh boy.
Oh no.
Yep.
I hope you still have your fortress. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Uh,
Oh
No,
boy,
I
that
think-
was another story in that.
I think I wouldn't say I know my party well. Like I definitely in the beginning of the campaign it was fairly railroady, which I think kind of comes with what we had planned anyway. You kind of have to have, in my opinion, if you want to get something done in a set amount of time, there has to be some level of railroading.
Yeah.
But if that's an expectation that you go in with, I think it's probably fine. I haven't had any like huge complaints about it right now. Knowing the story beats, like for example, they have, and I'll say this, especially if they're in the chat, they have complete free will. I will allow them to do whatever they want, but they know pretty much more or less the things that they need to accomplish to kind of quote unquote like can't complete the campaign. And of course, should they choose to do that, should they choose to kind of stray too far from the path, I have what I will call like reminders of the things that could go wrong should they choose not to do the thing that we set out to do. Nothing super intense to start off, but we've already kind of set the stakes in my universe that there are things happening that will go wrong should they choose not to kind of continue on the path that they've already been set upon.
Yeah, there's consequences kind of thing. Where,
Oh, yeah.
and I don't know. I feel like that's almost like a safe way of railroading as well, because there are consequences to your actions, and that needs to be a thing in D&D to prevent murder, hoboing, and stuff like that. If that's not what you want, if you want your story told, and you want them to be a part of your story, you kind of have to follow the laws of the world that you built. If they're not doing what's needed to be done to, complete the goal, then there should be repercussions. Not because, oh, I'm a ruthless DM. It's because that's what would happen if you were actually in this situation.
And that's why I tried to phrase it as reminders is the word that I use, is because I don't want to see it as a punishment, but of course, it's not a punishment in the sense that I'm not trying to do something. I wouldn't do anything to say like, oh, you're not doing the story I want to tell, so you get punished for it. But since I'm trying to maintain some level of consistency with an entire world where there's a whole, like for example, in the continent that I have called Volcala, there is a war going on right now. Think of like it's pretty much just like it's like a Pangea mega continent because it was easy. And there's a kind of a world war going on right now between multiple different countries, and it like just recently started. It was between two main countries just recently in the campaign that we're running became like a world war. If they should choose to go to one country that they're not friendly with because that's just what they want to do, they're going to be met with the resistance of a country who is at war, when whatever that if they have whether that's border patrol or they end up getting into some sort of interaction with the armed forces in that country. To me, as long as it makes sense, I don't want them to. I never would want anybody in my party or otherwise to feel like their actions are being punished. Just that their actions will have consequences, like you were saying.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, as you said, is reminders.
Oh yeah, I don't really got anything to add to that. You summarized it pretty well.
Yeah, that was actually a perfect explanation of it.
It sounds like the way you said reminders made me feel like it was I'm just gonna give you a little reminder.
Yeah,
I'm the DM and you're the players, and I'm gonna remind you of that.
because also the players, at some point might not be as in character like one night or something like that, and they're like, well, I want to do this, but the story that your character is a part of kind of need to be reminded, like the stakes, like what's going on, the world around you, and having those little reminders also is great for world building. As you mentioned, like if they enter a country that they are not friendly with, they're going to be met with forces. That's way more realistic. That's my main gripe with Skyrim. Oh, you were arrested for, what was it, like going through a border
illegally.
Yeah, crossing the border illegally, and you choose either Stormcloaks or was it Imperials?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and But that choice,
racist or the people that tried to kill you.
yeah, like there's no really repercussions for it. And you don't see war going on in the world at all. So it just feels like the war isn't existent. But by having those little reminders in your campaign that there is a war going on, that there is stuff going on around the players that the players aren't necessarily influencing yet, but maybe could influence, is a nice world building. And I feel like it's a great way. And I wouldn't exactly call that railroading, but it makes your world feel alive. And that's the important thing.
And I think some of the reasons maybe it feels railroading, and I think this isn't true. This is true for me at least. Like, I try to set things up in such a way where the players can do what they want. If they want to say, if they want to do something that I don't think is, the right move for the story, they're welcome to do so. But I always try to make the logical step. It feels kind of bad because you're like, well, I've set everything up, so there's really only one logical step they should take. But I think, that's not, if the logical step, if you're focusing around themes of like, what do people need? They want to feel protected, they want money, they need to survive. Setting things up to where attaining either of those three is something that aligns with your goals as a DM. I mean, that's just how you DM.
Mm-hmm.
So I try not to feel too bad about it. And to speak to something that you're saying, like the reminders for me in my game, I mentioned, like, obviously the one thing you think about is like being met with resistance, but it can be for me, it's some things like simple, like for example, party members getting recognized as belonging, because each of my party members comes from a different kind of country in this, well, not everyone comes from a different country, but they come from different countries in this world. And some of them are recognized as part of their heritage as belonging to a specific country that perhaps is at war with the country that they're in. Like something small like that. Or for example, there's kind of like a neutral country in the middle of this like large continent. And they were there after a very major city had been bombed, and they had learned about the bombing the day before, and they had went to bed. And when they woke up the next day, as a reminder that this is a world that's living and breathing, I had planned for them to run into a mass candlelit vigil that people were holding for the victims of that bombing that had taken place. And it's just like small reminders like that if you're, when it comes to world building, because I really do love world building. Just small things like that. They're being recognized. There's a tune maybe that they remember from their home country. They see an outfit that they may recognize, a language they may recognize. Those really, really small instances I feel have made the bigger impact when it comes to just world building in general.
Yeah, I like that. It doesn't have to be an encounter, but a reminder that like people were mourning that this happened, that the party couldn't stop this or whatever.
Yeah,
I think that's a bigger impact, and yeah, that's great. It brings back to also, we were talking about like acting and stuff like that. You mentioned the three, like the things that are important to the party, how you're thinking the logical solution. That's also a good acting tip for like anybody wanting to, act their games as well. What does your character want? What is motivating your character? Not what's motivating you, what's motivating your character. And that's what you need to focus on if you are wanting to like actually act out and be a part of the world. And that's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. And Trey, you will know this as someone who's done theater before, that like every musical, and I did musicals, so I'm not banging on, I did musicals as well, but every single musical, for example, they all start, most of them, not all of them, but most musicals will start out with what's called like an I want song, whereas, it's part of the medium. You have the character come out and they just sing about what they want. And then it's like, boom, okay, I know what the character wants. Like I'm trying to think of like an example off the top of my head. But in,
Drek just
for example,
wanted to be an all-star.
I'm sorry. He got to be an all-star by the end. For example, like take Frozen, for example. Mm-hmm. There's a song in the very beginning of the movie where the Anna,
the snowman song.
She just, for example, she just sings this, she's like, all I want is for the gates to be open, and she just sings a song about it. And then boom, we know. I mean, obviously, what we know as an audience is that there's more underlying her need for the gates to be open. We know that those gates are emotional and she wants to connect with her sister. But what we learn from Elsa in that story, in that song anyway, is that she wants to keep herself in. She wants to like shut things, like she has a certain wall built up around her that she has to maintain. And she wants to keep that up. And at least the point that I'm trying to get is that this is especially true. And I had my players do this before we made our campaign. I said, send me anything you want on your background, but I need to know, you have one question you have to answer me, and that's why are you going on this adventure? Like, what do you want? Because that will inform that. If you ask your players that informs how I'm going to tell the story. Because if I have a whole bunch of Annas in my story that want to open up the gates, the story is not going to end with the gates being closed. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not satisfying for anyone. And there's also scenarios like maybe you have some Elsas. I might have said Anna. You have some Elsas that are like, all my character wants is to keep this wall built up. Maybe what that means as a DM, what you should be looking at is, what will it take for that goal to change? Like, do they get what they want, or will that wall eventually come down? That's realizing the kind of ultimate wants of those characters, or changing, or having those wants be changed and then realized, is what makes a character arc. And I really think it's as simple as that. I really think it's as simple as like, what do you like want? I want to find my dad. Okay, what does that mean? I want, maybe they don't want to find their dad. Maybe they just want a family. That's the easiest one you can get. You're with an adventuring party. The way that it ends is that the adventuring party becomes their family. That's the easiest one. If you get that one, you're good. You're golden.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like I want to find my long lost mentor. I want to make my clan proud by defeating an ultimate like enemy. Just take whatever that goal is and think about what does that mean emotionally, and then boom, you have your character arc. You just have to figure out how to realize whatever that internal want is. Just by the end, they have something that they can hold on to emotionally. Sorry, I get really hyped about like storytelling.
Oh no, that's great.
No, it's good.
And I'm throwing around Frozen references a lot.
No, like that's great.
Go off, man. You made a great D&D analogy of Frozen. It's never been done before, but here we go.
They said it couldn't be done. Charles texted me earlier.
They said it couldn't be done.
He was like, "Fel, I challenge you. You cannot make Frozen a solid D&D analogy." And I said, just wait until we're like 40 minutes into the stream, and I'm gonna blow your mind.
Yep, definitely.
It's not.
I love that.
I'm just loving the chat is blowing up just talking about Disney right now.
Yeah.
If you're in the chat, think of a Disney character. And then just think of what their goal is. Like it should be very easy because they're Disney movies.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Is think of like what they want, and it's obvious. You want your wants to be that obvious. In one of my past campaigns, I was a player, and we had a party member who just wanted his ship back. All right, he was a Captain Jack Sparrow, wanted his ship back, and the thing is he got his ship back in the middle of the campaign. There's no reason for him to continue on with the party. Your need doesn't have to be the end of the campaign if you really want to play this character. Like you can leave the character and then be satisfied. And it's so satisfying to have a character complete their arc.
That's something I had to do with one of my recent characters where I wrote out this whole arc for him, and most of his arc was completed the very first mission of the campaign. Because how he did it was all of our backstories tied into the main campaign, and I was first. I'm like, oh crap. So I was like, how am I going to do this? And I'm like, I got it. It's my character was a paladin, so he made the oath that if the party helped him get his family back, that he will help the party complete every one of their goals.
But that's wonderful. I love that.
Stops retiring. Oh yeah, it's such a great. He is completely dedicated to his party, and I love that.
And I think even like to go back to Trey's example about like, all my character wants is like a ship. Like, first off, I think, sticking with this theme, you should be able to like write a song, like not actually write a song, but like if you think to yourself, my character, my Tabaxi rogue is in a musical, what would their song be about? And your song, if you're a Tabaxi rogue, may be about getting that ship. Maybe that's like you want that ship. But just like the example I gave earlier, for Anna and Elsa, like there is something deeper in your character, and this now we're really throwing back to the conversation we had about being emotionally honest. Is that like that is if you really want to find like the core of a character, think like it is absolutely okay for you to say, my character wants to have his ship back. Why does he want to have his ship back though? You know, is he's selfish? Does it mean a lot to him for a certain reason? You know, does that ship like represents a part of his past? There's always like a deeper meaning to character desire in any piece of media. And I think it's, you know, if you're like really able to like tap into that, and also that's like what can come in with like character like flaws. Like you could want a ship just because like you are a vain person and like you need to have the title of captain to feel important. I know a ton of people who are like that. They just want to feel like I'm like that. I just want to feel I'm here with you guys as the guest, and because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel I really want to talk about this. But like, in a way,
I will come on a show and talk about Frozen for 30 minutes straight, and I can't stop me.
No one will listen to my Frozen theories. It makes you feel good to like, you know, to like there are even us as humans, shocking, have drives that don't, you know, that we don't always address, but you have the ability when you make a character to, you know, your character may not be aware of their flaw, but you can be. Like I have one of my characters is like one of his things is he's like a coward, and it comes one of the characters in my campaign. It comes out all the time. He's like constantly hiding behind like enemies, and or hiding behind his allies, not behind enemies, behind his allies. He's constantly putting himself out of in safer scenarios. And I know just from like watching him roleplay the character that because he's aware of it as the player, but as the character, he has to come to grips with the fact that he is fearful all the time, and he has to come to grips with that because they're constantly in dangerous scenarios. He's in a really dangerous scenario just by being on this adventure that they're on, and that to me is really interesting. I think it doesn't have to be a flaw. You know, it could be as simple as, you know, I owe as an oath to my God and as to my party that like I owe a debt to someone, and that's something I need to carry out on because I have honor within myself. That is also like really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, though the flaws and bonds and all that stuff on your character sheet, like all those, yes, those are suggestions. You can make your own, but those aren't important. Yeah, like that's what makes your character a person.
I'm gonna set up I have to bring my computer out there. I'm running out of battery real quick, but keep going.
Oh, that's fine. But yeah, like that's what makes your character a person. Just making them flawless, you end up with a Superman character. Yeah. Most people who don't know Superman see him as this flawless entity, and he seems boring. No one wants to play a boring character, but there's a whole lot more to Superman. Don't get me wrong, I don't want like Superman fanboys and girls to come after me for that. But that's the thing is, you really need to emphasize those flaws and make it apparent. Okay, so your character Superman, how do you make him weaker? Well, your character just wants to be human. All right, how does he become human? He has to hold back. All that things, your flaws, your bonds, that's what makes your story come across. Your goals. As you said earlier, there's more than just opening the gate. There's an emotional bond behind it.
But yeah, I completely agree. Like, maybe I'm actually planning on maybe doing another video on my YouTube channel about this sometime in the future. But there's something to be said for emotional honesty, both as like a person, human being in real life who like wants to make like friends with other people, but also as a role player. I think to give, if I were to ever give any advice when it comes to like how do I role play, the first advice would be like, it's gonna feel stupid and you're gonna like look dumb. But just being emotionally honest and just trying itself. Just like literally just try, and get your feet wet doing it, because that's what makes it becomes easier the more that you do it. If you're someone who's nervous about it because you're afraid you're gonna look stupid, you're in good company. That's what I would say.
Oh yeah, definitely. Sadly, we are actually reached our hour mark, and
I just moved everything.
Yeah.
No more Frozen.
Yeah.
Hold on. I gotta get on I got my notes. My notes about Frozen.
How can I fit all this in like 5 seconds?
I gotta get all everything connected. I have my PowerPoint that I have to show. Oh god. Oh no, it's actually. Oh god, I'm all wrapped up in my wires.
Oh shoot.
You guys haven't heard my song yet. I was gonna do a rendition of Frozen. I was gonna do a rendition of the song, and then I was gonna explain it as I went along. All right.
But
I kind of want to make this into a video. It's too bold.
yes, definitely. But as per tradition, we always end the show off with our guests telling a D&D story, something either funny, inspiring, cringy, anything that comes to mind, like something that you just want to share a story with.
I really don't know why I'm like struggling. I really should have like prepared an answer to this question. Like this to me would be the like number one thing that I like would think would be asked. Oh, I don't know. We had I'll just tell a story of something that I was running a one shot with some D&D content creators. I was running with, I'm trying to think of who all was there. It was content creator Aiden, Cool Boy Shane. This is all their names on YouTube anyway. Cool Boy Shane, Aiden. It was Eldridge Sugar and Vitamin Dieter. Was running a campaign.
In chat, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Oh, then he's gonna love this. I hope anyway, if I'm gonna remember this correctly. Very fun. He's cool.
We're get ready to type ankily.
Yeah, just we're
He said heyo.
Amazing. Everyone should look up all those people on YouTube. They're really good content creators. Vitamin himself is very talented. But we were doing a one shot. It was a heist one shot, and it was a group of people. Vitamin, Dieter, and Eldridge Sugar were playing two Tabaxi rogues, who were joined by two half elves, one played by Aiden and one played by Cool Boy Shane. And I wasn't sure if I had really there was a lot going on, but I got to play a lot of my favorite NPCs. One of which is this guy named Gracchus Elmsplinter, who is just a rich idiot. I love playing him. He's just like, oh, I love to be alive. I love to learn things, and I love to make friends. And he's married to a very beautiful Tabaxi female named Rooney. And in one of my favorite, if I'm remembering this correctly, and Vitamin's going to tell me if I'm not, came time where one of the players, one of the half elves, bards played by, I believe he was a bard, played by Cool Boy Shane, ended up trying to seduce, he did not try to seduce, the wife of the rich idiot tried to seduce him. They went to the room, and he was rolling so very well, but eventually just rolled I want to say he rolled a nat 1 when it came time to she went in for the kiss, or he went in for the kiss and rolled a nat 1, and she scratched his face, and at that moment the doors flew open, and the head bodyguard was carrying in Gracchus Elmsplinter, who was drunk and crying about losing his brother. It was just that moment. We didn't record that session. I wish we would have, but it was this really funny moment where I got to be the bodyguard came in. The idiot was around he was holding on. He was crying and drunk and was too drunk to comprehend what was going on. And the wife and the head bodyguard were like, we will not speak of this and you can leave. And then everyone went out because he had rolled again and had rolled really well. That's not a particularly compelling story. I wish it had a better ending, but that's just the one that comes back to mind. It was a really fun game, and hoping to play with that group again sometime soon, actually. Hopefully that was what you're looking for. I can play the song if I can. Let it go.
Yeah, it was definitely great having you here. I'm putting his social links in the chat, and if you're watching on YouTube later on, it'll be in the description down below.
All right, thank you guys so much for having me. I really had a great time, and we'll have to continue this conversation about Frozen and Dungeons and Dragons. I'll make a Disney campaign and we can run it sometime
time.
later. You have to have songs prepared for the campaign. That's all of your rolls become D20s if you become not 20s if you prepare a song for the session.
Yes. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.